Well, they have paid a price. They've lost the Royal Lodge, they've lost their titles, they're pretty humiliated by what's happened. I think they're both in pretty bad mental states as a result of this. There's been a fracturing of the family. I think the daughters are slightly distancing themselves. Clearly, the relationship between Andrew and Sarah has kind of broken down. They're no longer going to be living together.
In a whirlwind of scandal and humiliation, Prince Andrew's name has been tied to his final days at Royal Lodge. But now, shocking revelations from former palace staff are shedding light on behavior that has stunned those who worked behind closed doors. What is the truth about Andrew's treatment of staff? What Prince Andrew was really like to work for has shocked even those who thought they knew the full story. Former employees have come forward exposing details of a life marked by entitlement, cruelty, and a disturbing sense of superiority over those paid to serve him. These personal accounts paint a troubling picture of a man who seemed utterly unaware of how his behavior would impact those around him. The shocking truth about his private conduct is finally being revealed, and it's more disturbing than anyone could have imagined.
So, I think this is the most serious royal crisis I can think of as a historian in centuries. This is corruption right at the heart of the royal family, a senior royal protected by a monarch, possibly two monarchs, and that's all we know.
In a matter of days, the former Duke of York will be forced out of Royal Lodge, the Windsor estate he has lived in for more than 2 decades. And according to people who worked behind palace doors, it is fair to say not many staff members will be shedding tears. For years now, stories have circulated quietly about what Andrew was like to work for. Not the public image, not the uniformed walkabouts, but the private behavior, the tone, the temper, the entitlement. As he prepares to leave Royal Lodge at the King's instruction and move into a much smaller property in Norfolk, many of those old stories are resurfacing. And taken together, they paint a very uncomfortable picture of how Andrew treated the people paid to serve him.
Andrew is notorious for how badly he treats the people who are around him. He treats everyone badly, but particularly to people he feels he's superior to. And doesn't surprise me one little bit. He is only Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Andrew grew up as the second son, and for a long time, the apparent favorite of the late Queen. He enjoyed enormous privilege, rank, and access. According to multiple accounts, that status shaped how he viewed staff, not as colleagues or professionals, but as subordinates whose job was obedience. Author Andrew Lowney, who spent years interviewing former palace employees for his book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, describes Andrew as someone who believes staff were there to serve and not to question. One of the people Lowney spoke to was Colin Burgess, a former equerry to the Queen Mother. Burgess recalled seeing Andrew about once a month at Clarence House.
Servants have been asked by the King whether or not they're prepared to serve their new resident, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and most of them have said no. Again, this is an extraordinary situation.
What struck him was the way Andrew spoke to staff. Not politely, not collaboratively, but like an officer issuing orders. Burgess remembered Andrew barking instructions such as, "I want this done and I want it done now," or "have that done by such and such a time." He said Andrew's repeated phrase was simply, "do it." That was the catchphrase. 2 words, no discussion. Burgess contrasted that behavior with how staff were treated by the Queen Mother herself and by King Charles, who he said treated staff as human beings. Dan Otway, who served as a chef, claims that out of all the royals he catered for, Prince Andrew was the most difficult and more demanding than others. The difference, in his view, was stark.
Now, an ex-royal staff member has opened up about his time working at Buckingham Palace. Dan Otway, who served as a chef, claims that out of all of the royals that he catered for, Prince Andrew was difficult and more demanding than others. He's certainly not getting a good rap.
Then, there are the stories that go beyond tone and into behavior that many found humiliating. According to Lowney's reporting, Andrew insisted that housemaids climb 4 flights of stairs every morning simply to open his bedroom curtains. This while he lay in bed beside them. There was no practical reason for this. It was expectation. Another former insider went further, claiming Andrew's bedroom habits as a single man were something staff dreaded dealing with. They described finding scrunched up soiled tissues scattered around the bed each morning, which maids were expected to clean up after making the bed.
Epstein was pandering girls to Prince Andrew, and who is a thoroughly repulsive human being. But he has all these teddy bears. The house manager where he lives, they're supposed to have the teddy bears on his bed in a certain way. And if the teddy bears aren't on his bed the way that he likes them, then he has a connection.
It is uncomfortable to talk about, but it comes up repeatedly in staff accounts, which is why it continues to be reported. Then there's the story that has become almost infamous, the teddy bears. Former staff member Charlotte Briggs said Andrew owned 72 teddy bears, all of which had to be arranged on his bed in a very specific order. Size order, exact placement, no deviation. She told The Sun that as soon as she started the job, she was given detailed instructions on how to arrange the bears. She said it was drilled into her. She even claimed she was given a full day of training on how to do it properly. If one bear was out of place, Andrew would lose his temper.
Clear example of bullying and coercive behaviour by someone who's a senior member of the royal household. I mean, no one should have to put teddy bears back on a bed using a laminated card for instructions. And if they get it wrong, they're going to get shouted and screamed at. I mean, that's just odd behaviour.
Briggs said it took her around half an hour each time to arrange them correctly. She described it as the most bizarre thing she had ever been paid to do. This account was backed up by former Royal Protection Officer Paul Page, who said there was a laminated, handwritten guide titled DY Bed, Points for Turn Down and Making. The bed. There was even a sketch kept nearby to ensure staff got it right. Page told ITV that Andrew would scream and shout if the bears were not positioned exactly as instructed. But it wasn't just objects that triggered Andrew's temper. There are also multiple accounts of him making deeply personal attacks on staff.
Unfortunately, Prince Andrew was totally different. He could fly off the handle at the smallest thing. He would be abusive. He would shout, he would swear. So we had a particular issue with Prince Andrew.
Royal expert Tom Quinn reported that Andrew once had a staff member removed because he couldn't bear to look at a mole on the man's face. Another staffer was reportedly dismissed for wearing a nylon tie. In Quinn's book, Yes Ma'am, The Secret Life of Royal Servants, former employees described Andrew as bossy, imperious, and prone to behaving like what one called a classic school bully. One servant recalled that Andrew always seemed frustrated by his position in the family, not being the firstborn, not being the heir. They believed that frustration fed into how he behaved in private. The same staffer said that if Andrew liked someone, he could be loyal and supportive. But the moment something went wrong or wasn't done exactly to his liking, he became bad-tempered and domineering.
He had a police officer picking up golf balls. And so I had to stand out of my post and watch this because I'm not allowed to, if a member of the royal family is in the garden, you have to stand to attention. And obviously I was observing and I just couldn't believe that a police officer was acting as a ball boy.
As Andrew's public life collapsed following his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, his private world reportedly shrank dramatically. According to multiple reports, Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson lived a quiet, almost isolated life inside Royal Lodge. He is described as wandering the large property with little to do, living what one source called a kind of arrested adolescence. At 65, his days were said to revolve around sleeping late, having breakfast served by staff, then spending hours in a sitting room dominated by a giant screen that took up nearly an entire wall. There he played video games or watched war films and golf coverage.
Now let's talk about the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, that is, now just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who has been stripped of his prince title and is being forced out of the Royal Lodge.
Despite being stripped of his royal roles and public standing, several reports suggest Andrew remained in denial about his changed status. According to Rob Shooter's Shooter Scoop Inside Lodge, nothing had changed. A household insider claimed staff were still required to address him as Your Royal Highness and to bow or curtsy when entering the room. The source said Andrew insisted palace rules did not apply inside his home, claiming it was his birthright and not something the king could erase. This mirrors claims in Loney's book where staff said they were instructed to bow whenever Andrew entered a room. If someone forgot, Andrew would allegedly say, "Let's try that again," then leave and re-enter the room so the bow could be done properly.
Impression of Prince Andrew.
He was very obnoxious, an angry individual. Obviously, we've got a lot of security procedures at the palace. Gates have to be locked, gates have to be secured. Guests must be...
Make sure you hit that subscribe button because I've got a special video coming tomorrow that you absolutely won't want to miss. Perhaps one of the most disturbing accounts involves a verbal attack on a long-serving household official. In his 2025 biography, Loney recounts an incident involving David Anderson, the former head of household at Hillsborough Castle in Northern Ireland. After a severe storm in 2005, Andrew asked Anderson if there had been damage. Anderson replied that a tree planted by the Queen Mother had been affected.
Would fly off the handle if we've not opened the gate for him in time, or if we've stopped one of his guests because we've not got the right ID or we haven't been given any information of who they are. It would be verbally abused.
According to the book, Andrew fell silent, then mocked him by asking, "Did you mean Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother?" When Anderson said he had joined royal service in 1984, Andrew allegedly responded by asking how he could have worked that long and still not know how to refer to her. He then reportedly shouted an obscenity and ordered Anderson out of the room. This was a man with over 20 years of service dismissed in seconds. The behavior documented by former staff fits into a larger pattern of arrogance and lack of empathy, traits that have defined Andrew's reputation in recent years. As the years went by, more stories emerged about his shocking treatment of those around him.
Your thoughts, how damaging is this for the royal family? Are they, of course, in damage control at the moment?
Oh, it's absolutely ghastly. I mean, this is a revolting photograph of Andrew now. And I think the person that's going to take this the hardest, obviously, is Prince William.
Years before the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein came to light, there were multiple warning signs that hinted at his eventual downfall. Former staff members who witnessed his behavior firsthand immediately noticed traits that were troubling. He was described as self-absorbed, arrogant, and unable to see staff as equals, characteristics that would only become more evident in the decades to follow. But long before these accusations emerged, Andrew had already displayed a pattern of cruelty, entitlement, and complete disregard for the consequences of his actions, traits that were now eerily aligned with what former staff had been warning about for years. When we link this pattern of cruel behavior to his later connection with Jeffrey Epstein, it becomes clear that Andrew's failings were not just personal quirks or missteps, but rather a reflection of his inability to live up to the expectations of his royal status. As former staff members have pointed out, Andrew seemed to believe the world owed him something. He ignored advice and warnings, dismissing the realities of his actions until it was far too late.
No innocent man, Gabriella, behaves the way that he has. He has not helped law enforcement. He has not been cooperating. And he also declared, remember, he declared that he would actually help victims. He's done none of that.
The Epstein case, in many ways, became a culmination of this long-standing pattern, one where Andrew's sense of entitlement and disregard for rules led him down a path of scandal that not only damaged his reputation, but also dragged the royal family into a public relations nightmare. The warning signs were there long before the Epstein revelations, from the early observations of staff to the cruel behavior revealed by Charlotte Briggs and Paul Page. Both point to a man who never learned to treat others with dignity, someone who believed that the world would bend to his will. And in the end, it was this arrogance and cruelty that led to his public disgrace, with the Epstein case merely serving as the tipping point for a man whose behavior had been called into question for decades.
He's a very self-entitled person. I mean, more so than any member of the royal family. He stuck out like a sore thumb. No one liked him.
In the wake of the mounting scandals, including his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and countless allegations of staff mistreatment, Prince Andrew's titles were finally stripped. This dramatic fall from grace marked the end of his royal career, a consequence of years of entitlement, cruelty, and a refusal to take responsibility for his actions. Former staff members had warned of these traits long before the public revelations, calling out his arrogance and cruel treatment of those who served him. Their words, once kept quiet behind palace walls, now seem eerily prophetic. As the once prominent prince prepares to leave Royal Lodge and fade into obscurity at Marsh Farm, his legacy remains tarnished by his own behavior and decisions